Class 9 students, welcome to Diksha Vedantu. I'm your Aditi ma'am, and today in this video, this is going to be a very special video because we are going to see all the exercise questions, all the pause and ponder questions, reflect questions, all the questions that are in between your topics, your back exercises as well. So a complete chapter, the one shot is already uploaded on the channel. Go and watch that first, then come to this video, and if you have already watched this, then you are on the correct video, on the correct platform, might I say. And we will do all the little questions, small questions, advanced questions, everything in this one single video that will cover your complete NCERT. And that, my students, is our Ramban, correct? Now, we are starting with the very first chapter, that is exploring mixtures and their separation, the chemistry chapter. So, if you remember, I'll give you a brief introduction of the whole chapter. We started with very first homogeneous heterogeneous mixtures. Then we study about solutions. Then we study about true solutions, suspension, colloidal solutions. Moving on to we studied about Tyndall effect and how to then separate these solutions. First homogeneous solution, then heterogeneous solutions, miscible, immiscible, what were those? Crystallization, distillation, sublimation, chromatography, and many more, right? Coagulation, centrifugation, all these we studied in this particular chapter. The whole one shot is uploaded on the channel. Please go watch it if you haven't, right? Because this is a very important chapter. Now, moving on, talking about the back exercises, I have done that concept-wise, okay? In this particular video, you will find first we will do the basics of this chapter. Then we'll move on to the first part, that is your homogeneous heterogeneous. Then we move on to the concentration part. Then we move on to the separation part. And at the end, we'll do all together the full back end of the exercise, right? That is what you will be getting in this particular video. So let's start it without any delay, okay? Now, first question will be beta from the section Think It Over, because it's a really basic chapter, so it will give you a gist of what are you going to see in this particular chapter, as well as how this chapter will turn out in further questions, okay? Now, the first question is beta, why do suspended particles settle in muddy water over time but not in milk? What's the reason? If you have not know the answer, go and watch the one shot first, then come back. The answer is here as well, don't worry. Now, the first thing beta, you have to classify these that muddy water and milk are obviously not the same kind of solution, right? Muddy water is what? Muddy water is suspension, right? And milk is our colloidal solution, right? It is a colloidal, right? So, of course, one will settle down, one will not settle down. Now beta, in suspension, the particle size is greater than 1000 nanometer. Okay, so the particles are heavy. They will settle down under the influence of gravity. These particles are, however, not that heavy. These are somewhere between 1 to 1000 nanometers. So, these are not that heavy that they will settle down under the influence of gravity. And that is the exact reason we have. Okay, muddy water is a suspension. Its particles are larger than 1000 nanometers in diameter. Okay. These heavy, large particles are pulled down by gravity, so they settle at the bottom over time. Milk is beta, however, a colloidal particle. It is a colloid, right? It is dispersed particles are much smaller, 1 to 1000 nanometers. Then, colloidal particles are light enough to stay uniformly dispersed and therefore do not settle under the influence of gravity over any period of time. You will not see that after few hours or after few days even milk starts to settle down. Of course, you won't see that, right? Making of cheese or paneer from milk is a different thing. Okay, leave that. We're just talking about milk. Done? Next question on your screens. What is the question? How is evaporation different from boiling? Of course, evaporation is different than boiling. Evaporation is evaporating something, substances go out in the air, right? Boiling is when we heat it. Evaporation, we don't have to heat anything for it to evaporate. But boiling, we have to heat it to a specific temperature for it to actually start boiling, right? Evaporation is a surface phenomenon. That means the surface, the evaporation, that the particles will fly away only from the surface, not from the bulk. Okay. So it's a surface phenomena. It occurs only at the surface of the liquid. That's why we tell that increase the surface area of the liquid that you want to evaporate, so that we get more surface area, more evaporation will happen, right? Boiling occurs throughout the bulk. Whenever you boil water or milk, it is boiling throughout, right? It's not boiling just from the below surface or the upper surface. It is boiling all throughout, right? So it's a bulk phenomena. Then beta, not just at its surface. Evaporation takes place at any temperature. Boiling occurs only at a fixed boiling point. Done. Evaporation is slow. It's a gradual process, whereas boiling is a rapid and vigorous process. Okay? Hello? Sorry. Then we have the next question on your screen. I thought it might be some delivery or something. They're just calling me to get credit cards again and again. These people. I do respect their jobs because it's really hard getting the call cut on their faces every day. But I'm recording, so please, sorry. Okay. Now, next question we have on your screen. Why do you see bright rays of sunlight when it passes through small gaps between the leaves of a dense tree? What phenomena is that? Of course, that is beta what? That is your Tyndall effect. So, Tyndall effect is what? Making the path of light visible, the beam of light visible when it deviates or scatter from particles present in the air. That are dust particles, water, droplets and all that stuff. Fog, smog, everything. Okay. So, the air contains tiny suspended dust particles, smoke and water droplets. Okay. These particles scatter the sunlight passing through the gaps in the leaves. These particles, they scatter the sunlight passing through the gaps in the leaves. This scattered light reaches our eyes, making the path of beam visible. Then, this scattering of light by particle is called Tyndall effect. Just how to, I explained you whatever it is, but how to write it properly are these lines. Okay. So, you are getting proper answers. Also, you will get the PDF in the description, so you don't have to worry. Make notes, write short notes while we are doing this lecture. Okay. Your short notes will be completed while you are doing this lecture. Proper notes you will get in the description. Okay. So, don't worry. You will get notes and you have to make short notes as well. So, go and get your copy if you haven't till now. Go fast. Okay. Next question beta on your screen will be from solubility curve. Now, you have seen the solubility curve in your NCERT as well, right? As the temperature is increasing, the solubility is changing, right? And we also studied that, ma'am, there is sugar in water, okay? And it takes some time to mix the sugar in the water. But if I turn on the gas, more sugar will get distributed or dissolved in the water. More soluble, it will be more soluble in the water. So earlier, if 10 gram of sugar was soluble in water, while you heat it, 20 gram of sugar will be now dissolved in water, right? So that is the difference that is the point of solubility curve. Its solubility decreases, its solubility increases with temperature, right? Its solubility is increasing with temperature, correct? Okay. Question on your screen. Observe the solubility curves. We have this solubility curve and this solubility curve of the compound A and of the compound B. I hope it is visible. And fill in the blanks. Okay. The solubility of compound A in water at 20 degrees. This is 20 degrees. At 20 degrees is dash its solubility at 60 degrees. It's 60 degrees. So, see beta. The curve is increasing only slightly, but it is still increasing, right? The solubility at 20 degrees is somewhere between 25, right? But the solubility at 60 degrees is now more than 50, 60 somewhere, right? So, solubility increased. So, at 20 degrees, the solubility is less than the solubility at 60 degrees. Understood? The solubility of compound A in water at 20 degrees is less than the solubility of compound A in water at 60 degrees. Understood? So, this is simply less than. You see how we are doing it? Understand it with proper clarity, and then only these will be important, these will be beneficial for you. Okay? If you have any doubt, let me know in the comment section. join the live as well. I will solve all your doubts. Don't worry. Okay? Okay. The solubility of compound B at 20 degrees. Again, solubility of now compound B at 20 degrees is dash its solubility at 60 degrees. 60 degrees, again, the solubility is at 60 degrees more than 20 degree. So, at 20 degree is again less than the solubility at 60 degrees. Okay? The solubility of, the solubility of dash increases more than that of dash with a rise in temperature. What does this mean? This basically means, beta, that the solubility of either compound A or compound B increases more than that. That means it is a rapid increase. It is a sharp increase. See, here it is somewhere between 170. Now it has more than 350. It was 60. Now it just has 120. It got just doubled. But this increased so much. 170 to 350. It has a difference of 60 gram. Where is it? 60 gram per in 100 gram, right? So this solubility is increased by a value of 60, but this solubility has increased by value of how much? 180. How much? This is 350 and this is 170. Just minus it. It's obviously more than 60 degrees. 60 grams, right? So the solubility of B or compound B increases more than that of compound D. Compound A with rise in temperature. Whenever it's a steep curve, that means its solubility is increasing further. That means if this is a salt solution, this is a sugar solution. If 60 grams of sugar was getting dissolved at 0 degrees and only 120 grams of sugar is getting dissolved at 80 degrees. But if the 170 grams of salt was getting dissolved at 0 degrees, 350 grams of salt now is getting dissolved at 80 degrees. So, you see the difference? That's what we mean by what can be more soluble in water as the temperature increases. So, whichever curve is more steep, that will be more dissolved. That will have more solubility. Done? Okay. Great. And we have the answer as well. So, you can just go through it. Okay. Now, next beta, we are entering into the section of pause and ponder. So, we will pause a little bit, ponder a little bit and then give the answers. Go through it very slowly. Make short notes along these questions and you will see how important these things are. Okay. Next. On your screen, okay, we are having a little bit of numericals now. A common talcum powder contains 4% M by M. Okay. What we do when we start doing numericals? We write as we read. So, given is what? Given is that 4% M by M zinc oxide. 4% M by M zinc oxide is given to us. Okay. And what are they saying? A common talcum powder contains 4% zinc oxide, which acts as an antiseptic. How much zinc oxide is present in 300 gram of talcum powder? So, beta, first understand what this sentence means, then we will find out whatever is given. Okay. Now, we have to see what does this mean, 4% M by M zinc oxide. That means 4 gram of zinc oxide, ZnO2 it is, right? 4 gram of zinc oxide, tell me what is it? Zinc oxide, ZnO or ZnO2? Whatever that is, 4 gram of zinc oxide in 100 gram of talcum powder. In 100 gram of talcum powder. Okay, that's the main thing that is given to us. Don't worry about these formulas, you don't have to learn them. Just you can simply write zinc oxide as well. Done? Now beta, what are they asking? This is 100 gram. We have to see how much zinc oxide is present in 300 grams. Now that is simple. So 4 gram of zinc oxide, simply write zinc oxide, okay, just leave it. You'll anyways get worried. Okay, zinc oxide in 100 grams of talcum powder. So how much will be the zinc oxide in 300 grams? Just multiply this by what? So basically write it as 100 gram has 4 gram of zinc oxide. Zinc oxide. You should know how to write it as well. Now 300 grams will be what? Do it like this. First do 1 gram of talcum powder will have how much zinc oxide? 4 gram divided by 100 gram. This much zinc oxide will be there in 1 gram of talcum powder. Understood? Now you multiply it with 300 gram. This is how you have to write. So 4 gram divided by 100 gram into 300 gram. So this will be your final answer. These zeros cancel out. 4 into 3 will be 12 gram. So 12 gram of zinc oxide will be there in 300 gram of talcum powder. We know how to do it. I know how to do it. You read the question and you're like, oh, just 12 gram, multiply it by 3. I know. But your teacher doesn't know. Your paper presentation is important. And this is how you will present the answer in your paper. Okay, that's why we are doing it so slowly. Understood? Okay. Moving on, next question we have 2 tablespoons of orange juice concentrate. We are given with 2 tablespoons of orange juice concentrate. Each have 15 ml. Each. Okay. Each have 15 ml of orange juice are mixed with water to make 150 ml of juice per person. Now the total solution means the total juice that we made is what? It is 150 ml, right? And this is now what? 15 ml in 150 ml. This is what, beta? This is solute, right? This is solute. Now 2 tablespoons of orange juice concentrate, each 15 ml. That is very important. Read it carefully. Are mixed with water to make 150 ml of juice per person. Per person. There are 2 tablespoons orange juice concentrate, each 15 ml. It is put in water to make 150 ml of juice per person. What is the percentage V by V of the concentrate in the mixture? What is percentage V by V? Percentage V by V is simply your volume of solute. Volume, what am I writing? Volume of solute divided by volume of solution. Volume of solution, correct? Into 100. Don't forget to write 100. Now, what is the volume of solute? Beta, see, there are 2 tablespoons and orange juice concentrate, each 15 ml. So, the total solute is how much? Total solute. This is each 15 ml. 15 ml into 2. So, 15 ml into 2 will be what? This will be 30 ml. This will be 30 ml. Okay, so the total solute will be, where is it? Okay, total solute will be 30 ml, right? 30 ml. Now, see carefully. Total solute is 30 ml are mixed with water to make 150 ml of juice per person. So, total solution is how much, beta? 150 ml. So, they are saying that in a glass, they put 30 ml of orange juice and the total solution, and they put water. So, the total solution became 150 ml. What is the percentage V by V? Just multiply this with 100 and you will get your proper answer. This will be 3 5s are 15. 5 into 20 will be 100. So, this will be 20%. V by V will be your final answer. Okay, beta, 20% will be your final answer. Done? Let's move on to the next thing we have. 20% will be your final answer. Okay, we have the solution, but I'm doing it for your sake so that you understand how the question is done. Okay? Then beta, we have vinegar contains 5% V by V acetic acid. So, we have vinegar which contains 5% V by V acetic acid. Acetic acid. Now, there is one more thing given, that we have a glacial acetic acid which is 100% acetic acid. So, it is just there to confuse you. Okay, don't worry. We have glacial acetic acid which is 100% acetic acid. 100% acetic acid. So, basically they are saying they are just adding these one extra thing. Okay, if you just skip it, you will see that in vinegar, you have this vinegar. Okay, and they are saying that in this vinegar, 5% is acetic acid. 5% is acetic acid. And where are you getting this acetic acid from? You are getting this acetic acid from glacial acetic acid. Now, is glacial acetic acid pure acetic acid? Yes, because it is 100% acetic acid. So it's just there to confuse you, make you think a little bit more, pause and ponder, right? So they're just trying to pause you a little bit. Don't get confused. If you want to make vinegar from glacial acetic acid, how would you proceed? So instead of just writing glacial acetic acid, if they wrote directly acetic acid, that would have make better sense, right? But they want you to get a little confused. That's it, nothing else. So don't worry, they are just asking you how much acetic acid you will add in vinegar. That's it. If you want to make this vinegar from glacial acetic acid, which is acetic acid, how will you proceed? So what is the solution, beta? See, in this solution, we are given this what? 5% V by V. So, percentage V by V is what will be this? Write the formula first. Volume of solute, right? What is my solute here? A solute is acetic acid, right? Solute is acetic acid, or we are getting this acetic acid from glacial acetic acid. So, solute is glacial acetic acid. Then, divide by volume of solution. Volume of solution. Now, beta, what is the solution? From the solution is vinegar. We have to make vinegar, right? So, the solution is vinegar, right? Now, we are given that this percent V by V is 5%, right? So, this is 5% and you can write it as 5 divided by 100 as well, right? 5%, 5 divided by 100. What is the volume of solute we need? Volume of solute, glacial acetic acid, we have to find. And 5% means what? 5 ml of acetic acid in 100 ml of solution. So, what is the volume of solution? 100 ml, right? So, the solution is 100 ml. Just multiply this. Anyways, this cancels out. So, volume of glacial acetic acid will be what? Volume of glacial acetic acid will be simply 5 ml. And that's your final answer. See, it was easy. They're just trying to make you a little bit confused or trying to make you understand things better. Okay? Done? That's your final answer. Okay. Next beta, moving on, we have refer to the solubility curve in activity 5.2. This is activity 5.2. If equal masses of hot saturated solutions of compound A and B are cooled from 80 degrees to 60 degrees, 80 degrees to 60 degrees, from here, okay, from here, 80 degrees to 60 degrees, right? Which solution is likely to deposit more solid? What is this? What is this kind of question? So, beta, basically they are asking that when we heat, substance is getting dissolved. When we cool, substance will start to crystallize or substance will start to form solid, right? When you keep anything in your freezer, it turns into solid, right? It gets water molecules, it gets converted into ice, right? So, it will form a solid. Now, they are asking which is more likely to deposit more solid. In which of the cases, more solid will be dissolved? Now, beta, just follow the curve when we increase the temperature. Here, we increase the temperature from 60 to 80, let's say. So, a little change in solubility occur. So, when we cool it down, again a little substance will be turned into solid. Here, see, at 60 degrees, lot of change occurs. Lot of the solute starts getting dissolved in the solution, right? So, when we ice it, when we freeze it, a lot of the substance will again turn into solid. So, the answer is compound B. Compound B is more likely to deposit more solid as compared to compound A. Okay, what are you going to write? See, compound B will deposit more solid. Okay, we know the answer, that much. The solubility curve of B is much steeper than that of A. Again, we saw that, right? Solubility curve of B is more steeper than A. So, for the same fall in temperature, from same fall means 60 to 80 to 80 to 60 and 80 to 60 for compound A and compound B, the solubility of B drops by a far larger amount. Okay, B comes like this, A comes like this. So, it comes by a far larger amount. The excess solute that can no longer stay dissolved. So, now, when we were here and we heated it, solute was getting dissolved. But now, all this solute, when the temperature comes back to 60, all this much solute will not be able to get dissolved, will not be able to remain dissolved. right? So all this will separate out as crystals. Understood the theory, understood the point, how we got here? Done? Great. Next question, beta. Will there be any change in the size of common salt crystals if the rate of evaporation is increased or decreased? They are saying that we have a vessel, we have two vessels. In one, there is more surface area, or let's say evaporation we are talking about, right? So, they are saying that there is some substance and there is some substance. Now, this gets evaporated in 10 minutes and this gets evaporated in 60 minutes. Okay. So, they're asking in which of these cases better crystals will be formed. That means in which of these larger crystals will be formed, or in which of these smaller crystals will be formed. Think about it. Okay. So, when you do experiments, you will see that when we make crystals, we leave it overnight. So, for the whole 12, 13 hours, or when we used to make crystals in our graduation, I used to make crystals, very, very good crystals, okay. So, we used to do the experiment on, let's say, 12 p.m. and we used to see it the next day in the 10 a.m., 12 a.m., okay, 11 a.m. So, we used to leave it for almost 24 hours, so the crystals are big. So, when you give it enough time, when the time is big, the size of the crystals will be better, it will be increased, it will be bigger size of crystals because they get enough time to arrange themselves in a pattern, they get enough time to come together. But if you force them to get evaporated, you force the excess water to get evaporated to form the crystals, they just adjust anywhere and small crystals will be formed. Done? So, what's the answer? Yes, the rate of evaporation directly affects crystal size. Slow evaporation gives particles enough time to arrange themselves in a regular pattern, forming large, well-shaped crystals. Correct? Rapid evaporation forms some small crystals, okay, at once. So, the crystals are tiny and poorly formed, no specific shape, poor shape, right? Hence, decreasing the rate of evaporation increases the crystal size and vice versa. Understood? Okay, great. Next question on your screens. State whether the following are true or false. Correct the false statements. Salt can be separated from a salt solution by evaporation or distillation. Is that true or false? Of course, you have water and salt. You just boil it. The water will get evaporated. Salt will remain, right? In distillation, the water will get evaporated, but we'll keep that water. We will condense that water even, and we have separate water and separate salt. So, this is true, correct? Distillation can be used for separation of two liquids even when these have the same boiling point. That is false, because we know that the difference in their boiling points, should be more than 25 degrees Celsius. Only then we can use distillation. Then, in paper chromatography, the solvent level should be above the sample spot at the beginning. And this is wrong. The solvent, the level should be lesser than the dot, right? So, this is also false. Evaporation and crystallization are the same process. You tell me, what is this? Evaporation and crystallization are the same process or not? You tell me in the comment section. This is your homework, okay? Tell me in the comment section. In the comment section, is evaporation and crystallization the same process? Okay? Okay. Next question on your screen, beta, is why do immiscible liquids form two separate layers in a separating funnel? Very, very thought-provoking question. That we know that while two immiscible liquids, oil and water, they do not get mixed together. So, they form different layers. But why exactly oil is at the top and water is at the bottom? Why is that? That is because of their densities. The one which is heavier will settle down and the one which is lighter will go up. Basic common sense, right? So, what's the exact answer to that? Immiscible liquids do not mix or dissolve in each other. Of course, they have different densities. The denser liquid sinks forms the lower layer. So, that means, ma'am, you are saying water is denser than oil. Yes. water is denser than oil. Its density is 1 gram per centimeter cube. And the oil is somewhere between 0.91 gram per centimeter cube. This is oil. This is water. So that's why the water settles down and oil comes on the top layer. Okay? While the less dense liquid floats and forms the upper layer. For example, mustard oil, which is less dense, floats above the water, which is more dense. Done? Understood? Okay. Let's move on to the next question on your screens carefully. Is sublimation different from evaporation? Is sublimation different from evaporation? First tell me, what is sublimation and evaporation? Ma'am, sublimation in which solid is directly converted into gas. Solid is directly converted into gas. But in evaporation, liquid is getting evaporated or getting converted into gas or vapors. Okay? This is vapors. Let's call it vapors, not gas. Okay? So, solid is getting directly converted into vapors. Here, liquid is getting directly converted into vapors. This is just skipping the liquid step. So, of course, these are different and this is the basic difference. Yes, they are different processes. In sublimation, a solid directly changes into vapor below its melting point. Okay? Without passing through the liquid state. In evaporation, a liquid changes into vapor at its surface below its melting point. Why it is mentioned below its melting point? Because beta, let's say my solid is at 40 degrees Celsius. Okay? And its melting point is 60 degrees Celsius. Okay? So, if it reaches 60 degrees, then it will start to melt. Melting means it will start to convert into liquid. So, it does not do that. It does not reach that below. Before even reaching to 60 degree, it converts into vapors. Before reaching to 60 degree, it converts into vapors. So, directly sublimation happens from solid to vapors below its melting point. Done? So, sublimation is vapor, camphor, naphthalene, dry ice. Evaporation is liquid, that is vapor, that is water. Done? Understood? Great. Next question on your screens. Clouds are made up of tiny water droplets or ice crystals, okay, floating in the air. Based on what you know about solutions, suspensions and colloids, what type of mixture do you think colloids are and why? What do you think? Colloids are solutions, they are suspensions or they are colloids? What do you think? So, beta, colloids are basically colloids. Clouds are basically colloids. You can learn it like that. Okay, colloids, clouds. Clouds are colloids, specifically an aerosol. Okay, with a liquid or solid dispersed in a gas. Liquid or solid means water droplets inside the gas or freezed water inside that gas. The droplets are in the colloidal size range, that is 1 to 1000 nanometers, not visible to individuals. They stay uniformly dispersed in the air and do not settle down like a suspension. If they could settle down, they will come on the earth under the gravity and we won't have any clouds, right? They also scatter light, which is why clouds appear white, a clear sign of the Tyndall effect. Done? Great. Next question. Why do cities with a lot of smoke and dust in the air often look hazy? Almost all the cities in India. Not something to be proud of, but what can we say? Why do cities of smoke and dust in air look hazy? Because beta, there are so many dust particles, right? There are so many water droplets and they are scattering light. When they are scattering light, the path of that light becomes visible. So, path is visible, so that sky is not visible. So, that's why it looks smoky, it looks hazy, right? That's the exact answer. Smoke and dust particles in the air are colloidal particles and suspended particles, okay? These particles scatter the sunlight falling on them in all directions. This scattering is the Tyndall effect. Path of light becomes visible and it reduces the clarity of what we see. Then, the scattered light forms a whitish veil over distant objects which we see as haze. Understood? Very easy. You might think that these questions probably will be getting asked in the question or not. We will know. We will know when you have PT tests, when you have half yearly tests. But this will definitely clear your concept, and if you are following something I said starting, you are following, you are making short notes while reading with me, then it will be a lot better for you to understand the concepts. Okay? You will get the PDF notes in the description, the full notes, don't worry, but do make short notes as well. Okay? That's my request. Please. Okay. Okay, we are finally reaching the back exercises. It's a little bit, I know you think, ma'am, what's already done? Back exercise will take a little bit of time. Don't worry, I will teach you so much. But if you complete this, you will have no single doubt in this whole chapter. That is the one thing I can guarantee, and that is the one we are striving for, right? So let's look into the back exercises, questions one by one. Whether the following mixtures are correctly classified as homogeneous and heterogeneous. Okay, let's go through it one by one. Okay, air is homogeneous. Okay, makes sense. Let's see. Milk is heterogeneous, colloidal, heterogeneous. Sugar solution, homogeneous. Smoke, homogeneous. Smoke is not homogeneous. Smoke has dust particles, it has water droplets. So, this is not homogeneous. Okay. Then brass is heterogeneous, but a brass is an alloy. When an alloy will be homogeneous. Okay, so this is already wrong. So the whole B part is gone. Copper sulfate solution, homogeneous or not homogeneous? Let's see. Salt solution, homogeneous. Milk, milk is not homogeneous. Milk is heterogeneous. It's a colloidal solution. Bronze is homogeneous. Muddy water, heterogeneous, of course. Then milk, heterogeneous. Blood, heterogeneous. Brass, homogeneous. The fourth part is the correct solution. Let's see what are wrong in these. The wrong ones are beta. So, muddy water is suspension. Yes. Milk and blood are colloids. So, all these are heterogeneous. But brass is an alloy of copper and zinc, which is a homogeneous mixture. Yes, that's the true part. First option is wrong because smoke is heterogeneous. Of course, we saw, right? Smoke is not homogeneous, it is heterogeneous. Second is wrong because brass and vinegar are homogeneous. Okay, the first thing, brass was homogeneous. Brass is homogeneous, they wrote it as heterogeneous. We done it. Then, while muddy water is heterogeneous. Okay, third is wrong because milk is colloid and hence heterogeneous. Understood the whole thing? What are homogeneous, what are heterogeneous? All the examples are there in this particular question. Watch it, write it down. Which colloidal, which heterogeneous, homogeneous has these examples. These you will have to remember. They will ask you in the examinations. Okay, done. Next question, beta. Which among the following mixtures show the Tyndall effect? A mixture of air and dust particles. Okay. Copper sulfate and water. Starch and water. See, now air and dust particles, they obviously show Tyndall effect. We just studied, right? There are so many particles, the path of beam is visible and hence the sky looks hazy. So, of course they do. Copper sulfate and water, I'm not sure. Okay. Starch and water, of course, it forms a whitish substance. It forms a whitish substance. So, again, the path of beam will be visible. So, C will also show, right? Acetone and water, they definitely do not show. Okay. And copper sulfate and water, beta, they also do not show the Tyndall effect. It also does not show the Tyndall effect. So, your options are A and C. That is also true. Now, for some reason, if you don't know that copper sulfate and water does not show Tyndall effect in your exam, how will you follow the trick? Which MCQ is correct or not? Ma'am, A and C are definitely correct. So, A and B, I don't know. B and D, A and C is the definite answer I know. A and C is the definite answer I know, but D I am not sure of. C and D I am sure that it does not show. So, this is not true. This is not true. That is a little bit questionable, but this is definitely true. So, I'll give this answer. Simple, right? Yes. Air with dust particles is a suspension, that is aerosol. Starch in water is a colloid. So, both of them shows Tyndall effect. Copper sulfate in water is a true solution. Okay, now you know. Copper sulfate in water is a true solution with particles smaller than 1 nanometer. So, it cannot scatter light. Acetone and water are miscible liquids that form a true solution which is transparent and hence it shows no Tyndall effect. Done? Great. Next question. Oh. Complete the table 5.2 using the given word and phrases listing the properties and examples of a solution, a suspension and a colloid. So, let's do this quickly with suspension, solution and colloid. You know, we did the table in our one shot as well. If you have not, go watch the one shot. It is available on the channel. It will be there in the playlist. Go find that, watch it. All this table is there in that one shot. Okay, so let's just quickly go through this. I won't take much time here. Done? Solution, beta, what are the properties? Ma'am, it's homogeneous, of course. It is small size particles less than 1 nanometer. It is transparent. It does not settle down. Okay, it cannot be separated by filtration. Does not scatter light. Solution does not scatter light. They do not show Tyndall effect. We studied, right? They won't be even filtered by filtration. Okay, what are the examples? Salt solution or brass. If you filter a salt solution, will the salt come out? No. You'll have to do the evaporation, right? So, true solution will not be separated by filtration. Suspension, the particles are greater than 1000 nanometers. Properties are heterogeneous mixture, large size particles more than 1000 nanometer. Particles are visible. Mud in water, it is visible, right? Settles down when left undisturbed. And you will see that when you left the mud and leave the mud and water, it settles down at the bottom, right? Separates by filtration. Now, if you filter sand, the particles are bigger in size. So, the filter paper will hold the sand and the water will go down. Okay? Example, sand in water and mud. Then we have collide. But the properties are heterogeneous solution, mixture, that is true. Heterogeneous mixture. Moderate size particles 1 to 1000 nanometers are the size. Particles remain evenly distributed. However, they do not form a clear solution. Still, right? It does not settle down. They do not settle down. Only suspension settles down. Milk settles down. No, it does not. Cannot be separated by filtration. You filter the milk, it does not separate out. Remember that. Scatters light. It will scatter light. Okay. So, example, milk, smoke and butter. Done. Next question on your screen. A cake recipe uses 75 gram of sugar. Now, pay attention. Try to solve this with me. A cake recipe uses 75 gram of sugar plus 420 gram of all-purpose flour. This will be your all-purpose flour plus 5 gram of sodium hydrogen carbonate, NaHCO3. Don't worry about this formula. I just am avoiding to write the big word sodium hydrogen carbonate. Okay. Express the concentration of each component using an appropriate method. Okay. So, this particular thing is given to us. Okay. What do we have to find, beta? To find is concentration of each component. Concentration of each component we have to find. So, let's quickly see how to do that. Now, beta, how will we do that? Solution. Let's find the concentration of sugar first. Okay. Now, first tell me what's the total mass of this solution. Total mass of what? The proper solution or your cake. What will be that? It will be the addition of sugar and flour and what was the last thing? Sodium hydrogen carbonate, right? So, 7 gram, 420 gram plus 5 gram. 7 gram is it? 75 gram is it? It's okay. It is 75 gram. Great. 420 and 5 gram. So, we have 75 gram plus 420 gram plus 5 gram and the total comes out to be 500 gram. Okay. They will not give you much heavy calculation at this point. Okay. So, see, even if different values are there, the final is 500 gram. Okay. Then, beta, first we have to find the concentration of sugar. Now, I have sugar that is 75 gram. So, this is what? This is solute and the solution is 500 gram, right? Both are in gram. So, how will I find? Percent M by M, M by V or V by V? And both are masses. So, it will be M by M. So, what will I use? Percent M by M, that will be mass of solute in grams. Don't forget. Mass of solute in gram, mass of solution again in grams. Done? Again in grams. When I say make short notes, write down these questions as well. These are very important. Especially write down these formulas. Okay? Mass of solute is what? 75 grams. Divide by 500 grams. One thing, ma'am, you left out. This is into 100. Done? So, into 100. So, these zeros, they will cancel out. 5 1s are 5. 25 is left. 15. So, total will be, final answer will be 15% M by M. This will be your final answer for what? For sugar. Concentration of sugar in the solution will be 15% M by M, means 15 gram of sugar in 100 gram of cake. Done? Okay. Then beta, the second thing, we have to find the concentration of flour. Concentration of flour. So again, mass of solute in grams, mass of solution. Ma'am, why are you writing these formulas again and again? So that you can remember it. And remember and see, if I am writing it again and again, I don't have to give exams. Either you have to give exams. So go write those down again and again. If I can write it down again and again, so can you. Go write it down fast. Into 100. Now, because what are the mistakes you can do? You cannot write gram. You can directly do it with kilograms or milligrams. So, that is the mistake we are here to avoid. Okay? So, mass of solute is what? Mass of flour was given as what? 420 gram. Right? So, this will be 420 divided by 500 into 100. So, these 0 zeros cancelled out. 5 8s are 40. 20 is left, 84. So, that will be 84% M by M will be the all-purpose flour in your cake. This will be your flour. Right? And what is left? The last thing left is your concentration of NaHCO3. That was what? Sodium hydrogen carbonate, or we call it sodium bicarbonate. I won't write the formula now, but you have to write 5 gram because you have to give the exams. 5 gram divided by 500 grams into 100 grams. So, 100 not grams. This cancels out. 5 and 5 also cancels out. So, it will be simply 1% M by M for sodium hydrogen carbonate. This is NaHCO3. Now, see, is everything adding up? Everything. This is 15%. 84 plus 15 is what? 84 plus 15. 84 plus 15 plus this one. This is total 100%. So, that means your answer is, all your answers are correct. Understood? Great. Let's move on to the next question on your screens. Okay, this was a complete solution that we don't need. A brass alloy contains 70% of copper by mass. A brass alloy, we have brass alloy. Okay, and it contains 70% of copper by mass. That means what? 70 gram of copper in 100 gram of brass. 70 gram of copper in 100 gram of brass. That is what this statement is meant. 70% of copper by mass. 70 gram of copper in 100 gram of total alloy. Okay. Calculate the quantities of copper and zinc present in 120 gram of brass. Total is given to us as 120 gram. Now, 120 gram is total brass. Okay. Now, see this carefully. We have this alloy. This is 120 gram and this is brass. Okay. Now, we are given that in this brass, 70% copper is there. So, I'll just quickly find out the 70% of 120. Okay, we will do it. I'll see, can we try it with two methods? Let's say with the first method, simply just using common sense. Okay, first method is common sense. Okay, let's see, what can we do? 120 gram brass and in that 70% is copper. So, copper in 120 gram of brass is what? 70% into 120 gram. That is 70 divided by 100 into 120 gram. So, this cancels out. This also cancels out. 7 into 24, 7 into 12 is what? It is 80 84 grams. It is 84 grams. Done? This is done. Done. So we have the answer as 84 grams. Let's try to do it with some chemistry. How will we do it with chemistry? Ma'am, we have 70% copper by mass. So we have 70% copper by mass means that this is percent m by m, right? That means mass of solute, that is your copper in grams divided by mass of solution. Mass of solution, that is your brass. Okay. Now, this is equal to 70%. Let's just erase this. Let me just write 70 divided by 100. Okay. Now, mass of solution is what? 120 grams. It is given, right? It is given. Mass of solution 120 grams. It is given. So, mass of solution is what? 120 grams. Here we have mass of copper equals to 70 divided by 100. And what will be the mass of copper? Equals to 70 divided by 100 into 120, which is exactly the same. So, mass of copper comes out to be 84 grams. Same thing with two different formulas, two different methods. This method we don't have to use because this is not a common sense paper, this is a science paper. Okay, so do it like a scientist do and do it like this. Mention everything and do it like this. Now, 84 gram is copper, 120 gram was total brass. This was total brass. 84 gram is your copper. So, how much will be the zinc? Zinc will be, ma'am, total minus 84. 120 minus 84. How much that will be? That will be simply 36 grams of zinc. 36 grams of zinc will be there in total brass. Done? Great. And this is your final answer. 84 gram of copper, 36 gram of zinc. Done? Great. Next question on your screen. The label on a cooking oil pack says 1 liter. Okay, this is something ghapla. This is something fraud is happening, ma'am. 1 liter but 910 gram. No, it's not fraud, it's chemistry. What is chemistry? So they're saying on a cooking oil pack says that 1 liter is equal to 910 gram. Okay? If this oil is mixed with water, will it form a separate layer? Of course, ma'am. What kind of question is this? If so, which substance will be on top? Now, from our common sense, again, we know oil will be on top. Okay? But it's not a common sense paper, it's a science paper. So, how will we do this? Ma'am, we talked about densities, right? Now, the formula of density you can remember is mass upon volume. Okay? What is the mass? 910 gram. Volume. Why am I writing volume? I'm mixing volume and solute. Okay. Volume. Now, this volume is in beta ml. Okay. This is in 1 liter. 1 liter in ml is what? 1000 ml. 1000 ml. So, this will be 1000 ml and this is gram. So, this is what? This will come out to be 0.91 gram per ml. Gram per ml. Okay. Now, what is the density of water? Beta, the density of water is 1 gram per ml. So, the oil density of oil is what? 0.91 gram per ml. Density of water is what? 1 gram per ml. Density of water is 1 gram per ml. So, which one is more? Density of water is more. So, we will write that density of water is more than density of oil, and that is why beta or water will settle down. It will settle down. Density of water is more means it's heavy. Density means, how will I explain density to you? Density is how many mass is there in a volume. That means that water is technically, for you, we can say that water is heavy. Oil is lighter. So, heavy thing will settle down, lighter thing will go up. Basic. This is common sense. You can use it here. But this is the proper procedure, the scientific procedure. As a chemist, you should use. You are all a physicist, a chemist, a biologist now. Okay? So do use that method in your paper. Done. Next question on your screen, beta. Where is the next question? Of course. Assertion. Solutions do not exhibit the Tyndall effect. Is that true? Solution. Yes, ma'am. Solution, collide, suspension. Collide and suspension do, but solution does not. So assertion is true. Reason. The particles in solution are larger than 100 nanometer. So they cannot scatter light. That is not true, ma'am. In solution, it is less than 1 nanometer. The particles are less than 1 nanometer. So A is true, but R is false. Third will be your correct answer. Done. Next question on your screen will be, I was about to fall. Okay, third is true. What is written? The assertion is true. A true solution is transparent, does not scatter light, so it shows no Tyndall effect. The reason is false. Solute particles in a solution are smaller than 1 nanometer, not larger than 100 nanometer. It is precisely because these particles are too small to scatter light that solutions do not exhibit Tyndall effect. Next. How could you separate the mixtures given in the table? Mention the reason for choosing your method. If a mixture cannot be separated, explain why. Let's study. Mud from muddy water. Ma'am, simple filtration. We will do simple filtration. Okay? Done. Plasma from other components in the blood sample. This is something different. This is centrifugation. Centrifugation. We studied, right? We will put it in a small test tubes, put it in a centrifuge machine. It will get horizontal and will rotate on a very high speed. The plasma is lighter. It will come on the top. The heavier things will settle down. Heavier things are what? RBCs, WBCs, platelets. Okay? Naphthalene and sand. Sublimation. Very easy. Sublimation. Understood? Chalk powder and common salt. How will we do that? That's a tricky question because three things are there. Chalk powder and common salt. What will you do? You will put it in water. Now chalk powder and salt and water is there. So you filter it out. Chalk will separate out because chalk has bigger particles. So chalk will separate out. Salt and water will be there. You just evaporate it, or if you want water, you do the distillation. Done? Then beta, so you will write filtration plus distillation. Or simply can write evaporation, both will be true. Evaporation and distillation, both will be true. Common salt and water, again distillation. Common salt and water will be distillation. Oil from water, that what was the name of that? Immiscible liquid. We used to separate it in a flask. Okay, so we just separated it out using a tap. So water settled down, oil is at the top. We open it, we collect the water, we close it, we collect the oil in a different beaker. Pigments of a flower, that is chromatography. Pigments of a flower, that is chromatography. Done? So everything is done. You can make short notes of these. These are important. Okay, that's what I keep telling you. Make short notes. Done? Next beta, we have the answers. Mud from muddy water, sedimentation. Sedimentation is simply just letting it settle down. But you can also do descentation or coagulation using alum followed by filtration. So I wrote filtration directly, but you can do this as well. What they are doing, they are putting alum. Alum coagulates, right? They mix up. They form sand into bigger particles, and now this sand will settle down, and then we'll do the filtration. Done? Plasma from blood, centrifugation. Naphthalene, sublimation. Chalk powder, dissolve in water and filter. Salt is soluble and passes. So chalk is insoluble and stays. Okay, so filter, chalk will stay, evaporate the filtrate to recover the salt. Common salt and water, simply evaporation. Oil and water, separating funnel. We used the separating funnel to separate these and put them out in different beakers. Pigments of a flower, paper, chromatography. Hey, what did I write? Chromatography. Yes, correct. Okay, next question on your screens. Two miscible liquids. Miscible liquid means they are mixed together. Are present in a mixture. The boiling point of A is 60. Okay, BP of A is 60 degrees Celsius. Boiling point of B is what? 90 degrees Celsius. 90 degrees Celsius. Suggest a method to separate them. Also draw a label diagram for the method suggested. So beta, which will be used to separate these? Ma'am, there is a thing called distillation. But there is a condition that for distillation, we need the temperature difference. Temperature difference. I will write difference as this. Okay. This is called difference. You will learn in higher classes. But it is too much to write difference. So I will use this. And you will learn something good. Temperature difference is simply, it should be more than 25 degrees Celsius. So if 90 and 60 has more, yes ma'am, it is a difference of 30 degrees Celsius. This is the delta T, difference in temperature. 30 degrees Celsius. So can I use distillation? Of course. So distillation will be the answer. And you will make the whole diagram of distillation. Okay. Here you will make a burner. You will make a burner. Practice it. Then here when it goes out, you make a condenser. You make a condenser. And then this also is getting in a different conical flask. That's a very bad conical flask. Okay. So basically this is the diagram. And this will be your whole setup. Done? Something like this. Go and practice these diagrams. It's exactly how it looks like. Don't overcomplicate it. Just like I made, just beautify it a little bit. Okay? Right. Compare evaporation, crystallization and distillation. Okay, beta. Evaporation is simply when we don't need the solvent. Okay? So, water and salt. Water plus salt is there. Plus salt is there. We don't want water, we just want salt, we'll evaporate the water. We want the water, we will use distillation, separate the water and salt. Crystallization on the other hand is not separation by evaporation, by heating. It is letting it settle down, all the things, we filter the things, we boil out, all the impurities will filter out. Whatever is left, we let it settle down, it coagulates and it will form big crystals. Okay, what is the exact solution? Evaporation, the solvent is vaporized and lost. We don't need the solution. Leaving behind the solute, preferred when only the dissolved salt is wanted. When only the salt is wanted, no water is wanted. Example, obtaining salt from seawater. Then crystallization, a what saturated solution. This is very important, saturated solution. All saturated solution is cooled slowly, so the pure solute separates as well-formed crystals. Preferred when a pure solid is needed. When a pure solid is needed, that's when we do crystallization, or when the solid would decompose on strong heating, the solid will break down, that's when we do the crystallization. Okay, purifying copper sulfate. Distillation, the mixture is heated and the vapor is condensed. Vapor is condensed. Here vapor is lost. Condensed and collected, preferred when the solvent or liquid itself must be recovered or to separate two miscible liquids, differencing their boiling points as 25 degrees Celsius, acetone from water. Acetone's boiling point is something about 55 degrees Celsius, water is 100 degrees Celsius. We want both of these, so we'll do distillation and not evaporation. Acetone will evaporate out, but we need acetone, right? So, we will do distillation. Next, on your screens, blood is an example of colloidal mixture. What would happen if blood behaved like a true suspension? Suspension inside the body. Beta, suspension has particles greater in size than 1000 nanometer. And we know that it settles under gravity. So, imagine your blood is not going to your brain, but it's going, all the blood is going down to your feet and it's settling under gravity. That's a massive disaster. My brain needs oxygen. My brain needs blood, right? So, this is not a good case, life-threatening. In a blood sample, identify the dispersed phase and dispersion medium. Beta, what is dispersed phase? Basically a solvent. Dispersion medium is basically a solvent. So, what is dispersed phase? RBCs, WBCs, platelets. These are your platelets. These are your dispersed phase. Dispersion medium is your plasma. It is your plasma. Done? What is it? The blood cell would be larger and heavy enough to settle down under the gravity instead of evenly dispersed in our body. They would clump and block the narrow capillaries. So, oxygen, nutrients and hormones would not reach the tissues. Circulation and transport in body would fail, which will be life-threatening. Oh, we don't want. Dispersed phase will be the blood cells, RBCs, white BCs, platelets. What is happening? I am so excited. Dispersion medium is plasma, the liquid part of the blood. Then, next beta we have, you are given a mixture of sand, common salt and naphthalene. Okay, remember, sand, common salt and naphthalene. Figure 5.25b depicts various steps used to separate the components. Identify and write down the correct sequence of separation technique. Now beta, you have sand, common salt and naphthalene. Now, what will we first do? Ma'am, we will simply heat it because. Why? Now, common salt and sand, they will not be separated by heating, but naphthalene sublimation. Naphthalene is filtered by sublimation or separated by, not filtered by, separated by sublimation, because it will turn directly from solid to vapor, leaving salt and sand. So, sublimation will be our first choice. This is sublimation. This is the first choice, right? Then we will do what? Then beta, we will put sand and salt inside the water and we will let the sand settle down and we will filter out the sand. So, this will be your second step, filtration. And then third step will be evaporation, right? So, first is sublimation. Second is your filtration. And third will be your evaporation. Done? That's your final answer. What's your final answer? Step 1. Sublimation. Heat the mixture under an inverted funnel. Naphthalene sublimes and deposits on the inner wall of the funnel, leaving sand and salt behind, just as we discussed. Step 2. Dissolution and filtration. Add water to the residue. The salt dissolves while the insoluble sand remains as residue. Residue means the excess amount. It settles down, right, on the filter paper. Step 3. Evaporation. Heat the filtrate so the water evaporates. Common salt is left behind. So, the correct sequence is sublimation, filtration, evaporation. What was it? Sublimation, filtration, evaporation. Done? Next question on your screens, beta. Where is it? Yes. Why is distillation an effective method for separating a mixture of water and acetone? Ma'am, the boiling point of water is acetone is 55 degrees Celsius. While the boiling point of H2O is 100 degrees Celsius. So, their boiling point has a difference of delta T. Delta temperature is more than delta temperature is 45 degrees Celsius, more than 25 degrees Celsius. So, we will use distillation. Good. So, water and acetone are miscible liquids. They mix together. They cannot be separated by a separating funnel. Acetone boils about 56, while the water boils at 100. So, the difference is 44 degrees Celsius, well above the minimum of about 25 degrees needed for distillation. On heating, acetone vaporizes well before water does. So, whenever you will heat this mixture, acetone will vaporize it and we will collect it through a condenser in a separate flask and the water will remain in the first flask. Done. Great. Next, using a table 5.4, what mass of potassium nitrate would be needed to prepare its saturated solution in 50 gram of water at 40 degrees Celsius? Ma'am, what is this, ma'am? You want to cry? Yeah, I wanted to cry when I was in 10th, 9th as well, but I don't anymore. Okay, now you have Aditi ma'am, so you won't cry either. So, beta, what is written? That potassium nitrate, see, this is the temperature that is given. That means g gram per 100 gram of water. That means potassium at 40 degrees Celsius, potassium nitrate in 100 gram of water is 62 gram. Understood? You have a beaker. You have 100 gram of water in this beaker. But at 40 degrees Celsius, when you dissolve the potassium nitrate, you will get 62 gram of potassium nitrate in 100 gram of water at 40 degrees Celsius. Understood? They are asking, we want to make a saturated solution in 50 gram of water. This is 100 gram. It's 62 gram. In 100 gram, we have 62 gram of potassium nitrate. In 50 gram, how will you have? Just half it, right? 62 gram. 31 gram is the final answer. This is the common sense. This is where you will use common sense. Okay? 100 gram of water has 62 gram. Half the water, 50 gram. Half the potassium nitrate, 31 gram. Done? Very good. So we have 31 gram of potassium nitrate. Great. A student makes a saturated solution of potassium chloride. Now they is saying potassium chloride. Okay. So he is saying in water at 80 degrees Celsius. So temperature is what beta now? 80 degrees Celsius, and leaves it to cool to room temperature, that is 25 degrees Celsius. So the temperature is changing. What would she observe as the solution cools? What would she observe? What would she observe? Now, my system is hanged a little bit, I think. Okay. I need a vacation. I'm on vacation every single day because I love my occupation. I do love my occupation. Okay. So, beta, where was I? Yes. A girl, she does what? She makes a solution of potassium chloride at 80 degrees Celsius and will cool it. Now, you understand that this is a saturated solution. Now, if I turn on the temperature, it will start to dissolve more amount, right? But if I turn down the temperature, if the temperature is decreasing, whatever the amount was dissolved while increasing the temperature will get undissolved. It will start to form. It will start to become solid, let's say. Potassium chloride powder was dissolved in water, increase the temperature, it got dissolved. The solution is made homogeneous. But as we decrease the temperature, this potassium chloride will start to not dissolve in the water anymore. Okay. So, what will she observe? She would observe crystals of potassium chloride. The potassium chloride which was first dissolved in the water, because of the high temperature, it will start to not dissolve and crystals will form. Okay. Potassium chloride will separate out of the solution. At 80 degrees Celsius, the solubility of potassium chloride is 54 gram per 100 gram. It is given, beta. It is given. Don't worry. But you still don't need the table. All this. Just understand. At 80 degrees Celsius, beta, look at this. At 80 degrees Celsius, potassium chloride is 54 gram in 100 grams of water. But at 20 degrees Celsius, it is 35 gram in 100 gram of water. So the water is same. The total solution 100 gram is same. But where this is 54 minus 35, where does this difference go? Where does this difference go? Where does this 19 gram goes? It settled down. It made crystals. Okay? Yeah. So at 80 degrees Celsius, the solubility of potassium chloride is 54 gram per 100 gram. But near 25, it is only about 35 gram per 100 gram. So the solution cools. It can no longer hold all the dissolved salts. The excess, roughly 19 gram in 100 gram of water, crystallizes out. This is the principle of crystallization. Understood? Clear? Okay. Next, on your screen, beta, from the same table, what is the effect of a change in temperature on the solubility of salts? Ma'am, if the temperature increases, the solubility will increase. If the temperature decreases, the solubility will decrease. So, it is directly proportional to solubility. Done? That's one thing you have to remember. Compare the changes in solubility of the four given salts as the temperature rises from 10 degrees Celsius to 80 degrees Celsius. Let's see. Ma'am, here 10 degrees, it is only 21 gram in 100 gram of water. But here it is 167 gram in 100 gram of water. Here it is 36 gram in 100 gram of water. Sodium chloride, only 37 gram in 100 gram of water. That's weird. Then potassium chloride, 35 gram in 100 gram of water. 54 gram in 100 gram of water. Okay, decent. Ammonium chloride, 24 gram, and at 80, it is 66. So, whose solubility increased the most? Ma'am, potassium nitrate, because look at the difference. This is 21, this is 167. So, its solubility increased the most. Sodium chloride, its solubility is almost the least. Then, potassium chloride, 35 to 54. That is decent. Okay. Ammonium chloride, 24 to 66. Now, what are the observations we made? Look at this carefully. Where is it? Yes. Now, beta, solubility of these salts in water generally increase. For all, they increased. For some less, for some more. Potassium chloride, the most increase, by far the largest change. Now, ammonium chloride, 24 to 66, an increase of 42 gram. Now, 35 to 54, 19 gram. 36 to 37, only 1 gram. Almost no change with the temperature. Done? Next question. 3 students prepare sugar solutions. A says 20 gram and 80 gram. A will say, A prepared a solution 20 gram sugar in 80 gram of water. 80 gram of water. B prepared the solution of 20 gram of sugar in 100 gram of water. 100 gram of water. C prepared the solution of 30 gram sugar. 30 gram sugar in 80 gram of water. 80 gram of water. Now, calculate the percentage, mass percentage, percent M by M of sugar in each solution. Now, you can try to do this without calculation, but that will be a disaster, a mistake, because you will see. You can see that out of these, 30 gram sugar is the most. So, its percentage M by M is the highest. Let's see. Don't jump to the conclusions. Okay. Let's see quickly percent M by M. That is what? Mass of solute by mass of solution. Now, beta, this is solvent, not the solution. The mass of solution will be what? 80 plus 20. 100 grams solution. Okay, 100 gram solution. So, percentage M by M is what? Percentage M by M. Can I do this? No, I can't. Shit. I have to write it down again. Percentage M by M will be what? Mass of solute, 20 gram of sugar. Mass of solution, 100 gram of solution into 100. So, this gives us 20%. This gives us 20%, right? 20% M by M. This cancels out 20% of sugar in 20 gram of sugar in 100 gram of water. 20%. For this, the total solution is what? 100 plus 20. 120 gram. 120 gram. So, this will be what? 20 gram of sugar divided by 120 gram of solution. 120 gram of solution into 100. So, this cancels out. This will be 6. And what will be this? 6 ones are 6. 40. That will be 16.66. So, this will be 16.67%. Final answer. 20%. Final answer. Whose solubility is more? This one's solubility is more. Okay. Even though the solute 20 gram is same, water is different. So, its solubility is more. Now, come to this. This is 30 gram of sugar. Total solution is what? 80 plus 30. 110 gram of solution. Right? 110 gram of solution. So, what will be percent M by M? Percent M by M, it will be 30 divided by 110 into 100. So, this will cancel out and we will have 30 by 11. So, look at this. Look at this. You can do the calculation, but if it's just an MCQs, okay, look at this. You can do the calculation, almost very easy, not that hard. But you will see that this 11 and 10 don't have much difference. So, almost this value will be almost equals to 30% or somewhere between 29.5 something percent. Okay, maybe more than that. So, you will see that this is close to 30%. Now, you have to give the answer. Whose solubility is more? That solubility is more. Why? Because 30 gram of sugar and 80 gram of water. This is 20 gram of sugar and 100 gram of water. 20 gram of sugar and 120 gram of water. Okay, something is different. Yeah, 20 gram and 80 gram. 30 gram and 80 gram. So, more sugar is getting dissolved, right? So, more solubility, less solubility. 20 gram and 100 gram. No solubility. Okay, so that's your final answer. Done? Yes. So, beta, this will be what? Mass of solution. This is all the calculation you will do. 20%, 16.7%. Oh, we have 27.27%. Almost equal to 30%. Okay. Don't comment. Done. Next, beta, whose solution is the most concentrated? Explain why. Beta, whose solution is most concentrated? Student C. Student C solution is more concentrated because percent M by M is the highest. Right? So, student C. The student C solution is the most concentrated at above 27.27% M by M. Concentration depends on the amount of solute present in a given amount of solution. Correct? Not on the amount of solute alone. Student C used the largest mass of sugar in the smaller mass of water. Right? So, student B is the least concentrated since the same 20 gram of sugar is spread through 100 gram of water. Okay? Next, we have examine the figure, identify the separation technique marked as S. Okay, beta, this was S. Okay, this was S. So, what is this? What is this? Comment down. Comment down fast. This is very easy. I have told you several times. Comment down. Which separation technique is this? There is a condenser. Condenser is. Okay. Label the apparatus A, B and C. Beta, it is simply A is your distillation flask. B is what? B was what? Your water condenser. C is your conical flask. Okay, done. Which of the following mixtures can be separated by this technique? Water and acetone. Okay, they gave some temperatures as well. Let's just look at this. Okay, now beta, water and acetone. Acetone has 54 degree, water has 100 degree. So they will be separated because the minimum temperature separation we need is difference in temperature is 25 degrees Celsius. So more than that, distillation will be used. Water and salt can be separated while distillation recovers the water from a solution containing the dissolved solid. Salt is solid, so it will not evaporate at all. Not separated are acetone and alcohol because their difference is only 22 degrees Celsius. What are not separated? Alcohol and chloroform. Their difference is only 17 degrees Celsius. This difference was given in the question. This will be given in question. Don't worry. Don't worry. Let me write in the PDF as well because you will worry and you will come, ma'am, you didn't tell ma'am that. Okay, let me make a smiley face. Alcohol and benzene only 2 degrees Celsius. They won't be separated. Also, one more thing was sand and salt. Both are not evaporation. So, they won't be able to separate. Okay. Next question. Okay, that's the whole chapter. And we are done with the complete chapter, beta. The whole chapter is done. And you will see that all the back exercise questions, all the in-between questions, all the think and ponder, everything of this chapter is done. If you made short notes, then you will be so happy that you have a note from where you will not only revise the chapter, but will revise the tricky questions as well, tricky things, concentration, separation techniques, all these things will be available in your notes if you did that. However, this PDF will be available in the description as well. So go check that out. And one more thing very important I have for all of you is beta, we have gotten a very important course for you all, and that is the class 9th and class 10th course. That is the, where is the class 9th course? Wait a minute. Where is it? Wait a second, I'm opening it. Yes, here it is. Class 9th CBSE. What you will be getting in this particular course? Beta, live classes by us teachers. Stay consistent with weekly assignments. We will be giving you chapter-wise assignments, 40 plus part and full-length tests. 40 plus tests. Tests are the things where we lack a lot. Okay, so those are the tests you will be getting. Unlimited access to post-class replays, and a very important thing, AI-powered classroom. That means whenever a video is going on, beta, you can study from YouTube as well. What is the difference in this case? Beta, this case, in this particular thing, you will see the video and you will directly ask the doubt, how is this, what is happening in this video? And an answer will come directly from the teacher, from the AI. We have scheduled, we have made the answers because we know what doubts can you get, right? We are teaching from so many years. So we have already told the answer to this particular AIO. It is called all-in-one, right? So we already gave the answers. So whenever you have a doubt, just ask and let me know if you ask some extraordinary doubt that this can't give the answer for, and then we will discuss about that. Okay. Now, by now, if you click, you will see that you go here and the exact price is literally 0 rupees. You don't have to pay nothing. You get weekly assignments, you get tests, you get AI-powered classroom for 0 rupees. And that is why this course is very important. And I want you to go right now, click the link in the description. It is available for class 9 and 10th as well. So go and check that out. That is it for this particular session. I'll meet you in the next one. Do all these questions, make short notes. Bye.